Well, if dangerous debris from last week's flooding isn't a good enough reason to not be out on the water for you, there is this. You may have seen this video floating around social media. It was taken along the South Llano River on Thursday. That big red clump appears to be a bunch of fire ants forming a raft to stay afloat. Of course, we had questions, so we decided to bring in an expert. Dr. Robert Puckett is an associate professor and entomologist with Texas A&M University. Thank you so much for taking some time out to talk with us.
You bet, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Okay, wow, yikes, ouch, those ants. Okay, what are we looking at there exactly?
Well, you said it. That is a raft of fire ants. And what you're looking at is it's an escape behavior. I think it's important for your viewers to remember that despite the fact that these ants have been in our state for nearly 50 years as they invaded the U.S. and moved across to where we live, they come from a different part of the world. And so they're from South America, where they have routine and annual flooding. So what you're looking at is a behavior that they use to escape flooding in their native system. They've just retained that memory here. So for most of your viewers, if they've lived here for any significant period of time, they've seen a fire ant mound and potentially seen the interior of the mound, complete with all the tunnels and the nest architecture. Well, you can imagine when rainfall begins, this is a cue to the ants as the water percolates into the colony that they may be in trouble. So they start gathering their brood, their queens, reproductive swarmers, as you see on top of the raft in the image, and all of the workers, and they flee the water line inside the colony. And if that water line ever gets over the top of the dome of the mound, they'll lock legs and float off. Wow. And so this is really important for them because they get flooded annually. And so they'll float until they run into some vertical structure. So in an unmanaged ecosystem, that's likely a tree, right? And then they climb up the tree trunk and rest in the canopy of the tree until the floodwaters recede, and then they'll crawl back down and start a new mound at a new location. And so, I tell people all the time, fire ants have very little sense of humor, and when they're doing this, they have even less. So in times when there's floods in cities or when humans are present, it's very, very important to be aware of this, because if you happen to be the vertical surface that they find as they're floating around, they'll climb up you and hundreds or thousands of them, and they'll sting. And of course, for some of us, this can be a deadly encounter.
Right, so definitely want to stay away if you see something like this. It's not fun to poke it with a stick. It's not fun to try to attack it. Are there any type of other, animals that people will see more of during or after heavy raining in Central Texas like this?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got heavy flooding rains, any animal that can escape on land will do so. So yeah, I think there's a likelihood that people that live near flood zones are likely to see lots of different animals that they don't normally see moving around their properties.
I have to ask you, we are talking a lot about New World screwworm right now. And the Texas Animal Health Commission says those flies can be more active after rain and flooding. But we also know that they drop their larvae in the ground, and that's what actually comes out as screwworms. Do they get killed in flooding, or are they going to spread more?
That is an excellent question, and it turns out in entomology we've become pretty siloed and specialized. That's a better question for some of my colleagues that are working on agricultural pests.
Okay, it's important stuff too. I don't blame you, Dr. Puckett, for not taking that one. All right.
We stick to the urban insects, those that crawl and sting us and chew up our homes.
Fair enough. Well, Dr. Robert Puckett is with Texas A&M University. We thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much.